on Thursday, May 15th, 2025 at 6:07 p.m. Eastern Time with my man, my brother, Mr. Howard Bloom, who hasn't been on in a while, and it seems like we've both been busy, but you've been on here multiple times for all of your books. Your newest case, excuse me, not your newest case, your newest book, The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, which you sent me and I finished. And you mentioned it a lot in it, but I think even had you not, I would have said it's the natural successor of Global Brain. And then you went in and you did the brick of charcoal flame analogy, which I use all the time on this show.
Amazing.
I cite your book all because it is the best way to there are like more meta features to things that don't make sense yet it happens. And I think to take that same broad idea about the emergent properties of things working together, even if it is not, from a conscious mind or planned out. I think that you really describe, and it's as a biology major, I mean, I've always had an appreciation for just how wild genetic recombination is, but I think you really went into it not only in analogies and ways to explain it, but also linking it up or proving it to be that same sort of emergent phenomena of it's this chaos engine that when the biosphere or universe, whatever you want to call, when it hits a new roadblock, like when it's like water flowing down a street, during a flood, and it hits the walls of the building and then it splashes and then it goes and it seeks its own level even though no one water molecule is like, let's find our own level, yet the water will. I mean, Delta Force, the premier tier one special forces unit in the world, they always say Delta flows like water, in that there is a mind, yet it's better than anything that you could plan. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that is almost the argument or the comparison that you are making to genetic recombination and how does it make sense in light of entropy and enthalpy? How do we make it fit? And I think it does it's a chaos engine. You throw it at the wall, and when the water can't go through the wall, it goes keep flowing. Find the cracks, find the nooks, find the crannies, and that's what it is. But if you take it as just a snapshot and one little thing, it makes no sense. You're like, how
Right.
can this just happen? It's not like energetically, I don't know, not profitable, but enthopically or entropically profitable. Doesn't make sense. It's way too complex. It's a waste of resources. None of these things make sense under the umbrella of thermodynamics as we understand it. But I think if you really zoom out and, as you do best, take it in sort of an omnology viewpoint, it does make sense. The key fits perfectly. That's exactly what it would do, is a
Right.
chaos engine of how to overcome the next hurdle. So I'm gonna shut up. Everybody that's listening, well, it'll be published any day now. The link will be in the description, as is your website, all your socials, all your other books. I'm gonna shut up now, Howard, hand it over to you.
Well, just, this book, the subtitle, it's called The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. The subtitle is Everything You Know About Nature is Wrong. And we think of nature as this harmonious thing, and only we have caused problems in it. And if we only get rid of us, it'll be a petting zoo, it'll be a Garden of Eden. And that's not true at all. Nature is persnickety. Nature is obstreperous. Nature has moxie. Nature is in a state of constant rebellion against herself. Why? Because the universe is a search engine of possibility space. It searches for the realms of the impossible that it can yank into the realm of the ordinary. And it is constantly reaching out, stretching out to produce something radically new, and especially to produce emergent properties. So the charcoal briquette you were referring to. So you take a charcoal briquette, you put it on your driveway, and what does it do? Nothing. You douse it with lighter fluid and light a match, and what does it do? A flame is dancing over it. Now, what the hell is that flame? That flame is definitely a thing. If you stick your finger in it the way you would toast a marshmallow, your finger is going to hurt. You can see its outlines. Even though it's constantly dancing around, it has an envelope of what you could call identity or a self. You could put a cocktail fork through it, and it won't stop it. So it's not matter. Um, and what the hell is it? And saying that it's energy is a cop out. It is a thing that arises unexpectedly from the charcoal briquette, the lighter fluid, and the spark. And it is neither the charcoal briquette, nor the lighter fluid, nor the spark. It is something incredibly different than they are. And the universe is constantly popping out these things. I call them material miracles and supersized surprises because emergent properties is a bit awkward
Boring.
for most people. But the fact is, there's a phrase in this book. Nature loves those who oppose her most. She doesn't love those who are trying to eradicate themselves to produce a petting zoo. Every time we invent something new, whether it's the telephone in 1876, the typewriter in 1876, the file cabinet in 1880, and ultimately the smartphone in 1907, 2007. Sorry, we're off a century. So, at any rate, these things add to the toolkit of the cosmos. These things add capabilities the cosmos has never had before. That's an act on behalf of the cosmos. We are exploring the realm of the impossible to bring the impossible into the realm of the everyday in ways that this cosmos has never seen before. We are her quickest invention engines, even quicker than bacteria. And that's hard because bacteria are highly adaptive. Bacteria are so adaptive and clever at this business of going fuck you to nature, of opposing her and inventing new ways to overcome her, that we have a hard time keeping up with them in our labs. Despite the fact that we spend or have until the last 3 months, we have spent a ton on research, and yet it is hard for us with all of our science to keep up with bacteria. Why? Because they're an exploration engine too. They're a search engine of the cosmos looking for her next slots in possibility space. So the book is about the outrageous rebellion. I mean, first of all, regarding this planet as a warm and mothering place is, I'm sorry, that's just one facet of the planet and it oversimplifies things. This planet is not Disneyland.
It's a little sliver that we can experience in
Yeah,
civilized society, but no, it is a coliseum.
right. So 4.5 billion years ago, when this planet formed, it was the home of all climate catastrophe and the most inhospitable place you can imagine on Earth. Because it spun around its axis every 6 hours. That meant you had climate catastrophe. Every 3 hours, the temperature would go up 88 degrees. Then at 3 hours later, the temperature would go down 88 degrees. Meantime, while your part of the planet was facing the sun, you'd be flooded by poisonous rays. We call those rays light, but they are essentially poisonous to life until life gets a handle on how to harness them. And when you flip to the other side, facing away from the sun, you are marinated in something equally poisonous, darkness. Then there's the fact that the planet, 4.5 billion years ago, came complete with a tilt in its axis, and it circled the sun. So that produced major climate disasters. We call them summer, winter, fall, and spring, and we are so accustomed to them we don't even keep in mind the fact that they are climate changes. Plus, the solar system does a loop around the core of the galaxy every 235 million years. And on that trip around the galaxy, it goes through things that would freeze the blood of Frodo the Hobbit. It goes through galactic fluff, which we accumulate about 100,000 tons of space dust in our outer atmosphere a year. That amount goes up to 300,000 tons when we go through galactic fluff. And that produces climate nightmares on top of the climate nightmares. So for life to take hold on this planet was the most improbable thing ever because everything was hostile to life. And as I said, this is the home of climate catastrophe, period. So life, in order to take hold, had to do a big fuck you to nature, to the way that things work, to the status quo, to what some people call an equilibrium. I'm sorry, give me a break. This is not an equilibrium at any stretch of its existence for 13.37 billion years. This, or 13.73 billion years. This cosmos has been anything but an equilibrium and a harmony. So that is the thesis of the book, in essence. And we have to understand nature in order to work with her properties and do our work properly, because our work is to expand the capabilities of this cosmos. And especially because this is the only planet. I mean, theoretically, there should be life everywhere above our heads. But in fact, we have never found life, evidence for life, any place else in the universe. So not only do we have to constantly come up with flamboyantly rebellious new ways of doing things on behalf of the toolkit of the cosmos to which we are adding, but we have to do that on behalf of life itself. Life has taken one poison pill of a planet and turned it green. And now it's our job to take life to as many other poison pills of stone in the sky as we can find, so life can try to take hold there. And life can do it because life flings a finger in the face of the existing status quo. So those who want to maintain the pristine qualities of the moon and Mars, because to put a footprint on them is destroying nature, they're crazy. What did they think life did in order to grab hold of this planet? It did basically three or four major space programs. First, life took off in the oceans. And the next step was there was this 30% of the planet that life wasn't reaching. And and for good reason, life wasn't reaching it. It was bleak. It was inhospitable, to say the least. It was basically poisonous. Again, it was flooded with radiation that could kill you, and there was nothing to eat up there. So if you had been a good parent and I had been one of your multicellular offspring, and I had wanted to go up to this stretch of totally inhospitable territory, if I had wanted to mount a space program, you would have said, look, you're young, you're ambitious, all of that is good. But the fact is, the ocean is our home. The ocean is the only place where we can live. How can you tell? There's a little mini ocean in every cell of you. That's how deeply you need the ocean. The ocean gives you things to eat. The ocean gives you places to hide, places to nest. You're not going to find any of those things up there. There is no food up there. There is no place to shelter up there. You're going to be down and out. It's going to be the end of you. And yet, some of these audacious multicellular green things took to the land. And despite all, and because the other complaint from you, a nice nature-loving parent, is why don't you spend that energy that you're going to waste trying to get to this outrageous desert on those who are starving down here in the sea? The Bernie Sanders argument. Well, the fact is that life didn't obey those commands. Life stepped out of the bounds of the ocean. Didn't step. It moved out of the bounds of the ocean. And it began to find ways, to invent ways of making homes on this hostile surface. And that hostile surface is called land. As I said, there's 30% of the Earth's surface is covered by land. So if there's only 30% of the Earth's surface, what are your possibilities versus the possibilities of life in the sea? They're small. They've got to be very small. No, life on land is 70% of the life on this Earth. Life on land outdid the life in the ocean by a factor of roughly 8. So is nature trying to tell us something here? Yeah. Whenever you see something that looks like a status quo and a harmony, somebody's got to fling a finger at it. Somebody's got to oppose it. Somebody's got to want to rise above it. And do space programs pay off? Well, what about this little group of grubby creatures, once there were plants and animals on Earth, that about 300,000 years ago decided to go to the sky? Again, if you were my parent and I wanted to go up to the sky, you would have said, look, Howard, you got to realize every good thing is down here on Earth. The Earth nurtures you. The Earth gives you food. The Earth gives you nesting space. There's nothing up there. There's nothing for you to eat. Take a look up there. What do you see? Nothing. Clouds. Are you going to eat clouds? At night, stars. Are you going to eat stars? There is nothing up there. And if you fall from way up there, it's your death. Yet some creatures did it 300,000 years ago. Their ability to take to the sky is so inherent in their nature that we call them flies. They're insects. And then roughly 120 million years later, 120 million years, billion years. I always get my millions and billions mixed up. But at any rate, about 120 million years later, another group of creatures, dinosaurs, had these wild ideas. Adolescents, strange creatures. They come up with all kinds of nutty things. And they wanted to fly. And what would a good dinosaur parent have said? Every good thing down here is on the ground. If you want to spend all that energy, spend it on giving to the poor down here who need your help. That's an impossible place. Nothing to eat, nothing to nest in. And this morning, when you walked out of the house, how many of the traditionalist, conservativist, environmentalist dinosaurs did you see? Versus how many of the loony dinosaurs who wanted to fly did you see? You saw no conservative, conservationist dinosaurs whatsoever. But you saw a dozen of the loony dinosaurs who wanted to fly. They're called birds now. So nature is constantly flinging a finger in the face of her status quo and rising to another level by inventing something new, flying for the insects, flying for the dinosaurs, even walking was a radical space program. It meant trying, because the first land creatures were bryophytes, they're mosses, and they did something really daring. They managed to lift themselves an inch or two high off the ground. Now, in terms of the single cells that make up a moss plant, that's like going to outer space, 2.5 inches high. That's an enormous height. That's outlandish. And then when it came for sex, they would throw their sperm 5 inches high. That is the equivalent probably of going halfway to the moon for the individual cells of a moss plant. They were flinging a finger in the face of nature and mounting their own space program. Nature has done this over and over again. Is there a message in all of this? Well, for one thing, birds, the loony dinosaurs who fly, they live 60% longer than those nice land-walking mammals who obey the Earth's most basic law, gravity. I think there's another advantage they have over us. Oh, yes, and there are twice as many species of them, which means there are twice as many ways of making a living in the sky as there are of making a living down here on the land. So nature is constantly proceeding through her rebel children. The rebel children who simply won't take the status quo, who don't think that the status quo is a warm and fuzzy petting zoo for plants and animals with all humans removed, all industrialism removed. Industrialism produced whole new properties for this cosmos. The ability, nature has the ability, life has the ability of manic mass production. The number of creatures who have lived on this planet since the beginning of life 3.85 billion years ago has so many zeros after it that I can't even count them. But that's another aspect of the universe. It's manic mass production and manic mass destruction. Every one of those creatures, with the exception of those who are alive today, are dead. 99% of all of the species who have ever existed are extinct. Who did that, man or nature? Nature did it. She did it long before there were tailpipes, smokestacks, and industrialism and capitalism. Um, so um, the in the 1750s onward to the next for the next 100 years, we invented ways to manic mass produce stuff. That was a capacity only nature had in the past. So is nature opposed to our capitalism? I seriously doubt it. Um, I mean, look, we have self-corrective mechanisms. Most other bacteria probably have self-corrective mechanisms because they have so much. But we know that most species do not have self-corrective mechanisms the way that we do. So we began to turn toward environmentalism in 1851. And Richard Nixon, of all people, I believe, in 1971, 19, okay, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring came out in 1951 and started the environmentalist movement. In 1970, there was Earth Day. Sometime around then, Richard Nixon, of all people, founded the EPA, the Environmental Protection Administration. When I first came to New York City in 1964, I tried wearing all white clothing. It didn't work because by noon, there were these black creases all across the clothing.
Oh,
Why? Because Con Edison had, I can't remember how many stories, it's about 12-story tall smokestacks right nearby. And they were putting out coal dust. They were putting out thick smoke. In the I think it was the 1950s in London, 2,000 people were killed by that smoke. By the 1980s, we had cleaned that smoke up. We had learned our lesson. We were self-correcting. And the whole environmental movement has been a movement of self-correction. No other species that we know has that kind of self-corrective mechanism. Chalk up another invention to the cosmos. Chalk up another tool in the toolkit of the cosmos. So, any questions?
No, especially just how you kind of ended that was one thing I've always felt, or not always, but as long as I can remember, 10 plus years, everything since I've ever put any brain power towards it, was that the byproduct of pollution, of man-made climate change, of whatever industrial byproducts, which are metabolites, right? Like you talked about in the book, like
Right,
no different than a cell. Yeah, I've never looked at it as like a mistake or like we went down the wrong road and now we got to do a 180. Oh, we're using coal. We were supposed to do this. I've always looked at it as we did this and that accelerated the rest of tech because all of technology moves forward together. Like
right,
my buddy said it well, it was like a gaming computer. He's like you can't really just upgrade one part. You can kind of marginally, but if you
right,
get a generation better graphics card, you need a new power supply unit. And then if you don't get a CPU to be able, you're going to be bottlenecked by the graphics. So
right,
you can either do these little incremental changes
right,
or repairs. But if you want a new thing, you got to go full. You got to slap down some money. I've always thought that mankind's use of, be it, from wood to coal to oil, has always been this massive accelerant to push it all forward. And
right,
then sort of we'll deal with the byproducts when we get there. And you could say, well, we got to deal with them now. Well, because all of technology kind of rises like a tide and it
right,
raises everything, that also means we have things like computing power and metamaterials and material science. And
right,
we now have the ability to deal with the side effects in a manner with computing power and technology and private corporations that are essentially just their cells. They're very efficient cells.
right,
The profit motive is just it's our form of like how are you going to make this work? And just like you pointed out in the book, what do you do with phosphorus? What do you do with like cyanobacteria? It's you make it work. You find them. You have vents at the bottom of the ocean. It's 10,000 psi and it's boiling off. It's you find ways to work around it. I think that's what sort of the Industrial Revolution. is and was is it pushes everything else so far forward that we now have the ability to deal with it. And it's hard to see when we're in it because it just seems like it's a lifetime. But in the mass in the scale of life on Earth in geologic time, it's really nothing. This is just one more thing on the timeline to where if
Right.
you look back and things like the development of different bacteria or eukaryotes or prokaryotes or oxygen, they're just little notches on a timeline. But I mean, if you
Right.
look at the time between notches, it's like that's like 10,000 that's 10,000 units of ancient Egypt to now. Just like that. But
Right.
I've always thought that that's what this was is you can go very slowly forward and only do renewables and only do, some Dutch water wheel or a windmill and you can do that. And I'm sure somewhere in the infinite universe they have. But the Earth is a Mother Nature is a coked up venture capitalist. No part of it is like, let's do steady growth. It's like 18, I want 18,000x return tomorrow. Like, fuck it, I'll
Right.
call the president of China. Like, that's what we do. And
Right.
I feel like that's what the Industrial Revolution is. It's like, so we've gone forward, and it's like, all right, now how do we deal with this? We kind of went a little too far forward. And now we find a way to deal with it, but that's what it doesn't do these timid steps. It
Right.
does. You could go, well, what if it doesn't work? Yeah, Mother Nature doesn't give a shit. Like, oh, it didn't work. All right, burn down all of human civilization. To Mother Nature, that's another day. It's like,
Right.
whatever. 10,000 years, 100,000, whatever. Yeah, burn it all down. I'll
And
start.
pollution is endemic to nature.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, bacteria in the sea invented this whole new industrial technique for kidnapping, seducing, and recruiting photons, which are nothings. They're wiggles. And in other words, they are no thing. And using them to produce carbohydrates and sugars. No, no, they were probably one way or the other. They used them to nourish themselves. That was a giant, outrageous step. If Bernie Sanders had been around at the time, he would have said, "Don't waste your energy on this. Feed the poor." But being able to harness light, which is a no thing, was astonishing. But so once you started using light to photosynthesize, which these bacteria did, you turned out you took the stuff you could take and use from the process you used, and then you farted out what was poisonous to you.
O2.
And a little tiny bacterial fart in a huge, huge atmosphere is going to make no difference at all, right? But over a billion years, these farts piled up in the atmosphere. And they produced, because they were poisonous, they produced an enormous die-off, a
Yeah.
die-off of just about everything there was on Earth, or a significant percentage of it. And the poison that these cyanobacteria were farting out was oxygen.
Yeah.
So what did life do? Tiny little bacteria, archaeobacteria, worked out a way of feeding off the oxygen. And big bacteria, normal bacteria, basically made a deal with these little tiny bacteria. Okay, you come inside me, I will give you shelter, I will produce the perfect environment, your paradise. All I ask of you is that you give me the energy you're making with this poison, oxygen. And it worked. But then we had a green revolution, and the green revolution produced a lot of carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide levels went up way beyond what they are now, way, way beyond, as much as 1,000 times what it is now, and changed the climate utterly. So life making climate change is part of life. And I mean, rainforests make their own weather. If you look at them from a distance, there's constantly a cloud above them raining. That's why we call it rainforest. Well, what makes that cloud park itself over the rainforest? The rainforest does. So our job is if we want to stabilize the climate the way it was before the Industrial Revolution, let's say take it back, dial it back to 1650. First of all, that's an anthropogenic decision. That's a human-made decision. But if that's what because that's not the way nature works at all. Nature's about to give us sometime in the not too distant future another ice age or another real global warming where nature itself produces the carbon dioxide because it has been so warm on this planet at various times in the past, like 155 million years ago, that there have been tropical animals and plants at the South Pole. So our what we think of as our global warming that we are causing is minuscule compared to the global warmings the planet has produced in the past. So what's our job? If we want to stabilize the climate the way it was in 1650, that's nice. All the plants and animals with which we're accustomed to sharing the planet will joy in what we are doing. How do we do it? Climate stabilization technologies. We've been working on climate stabilization technologies since since we started the first fire that we could control, roughly 800 million to a billion years ago. No, I get my millions all mixed,
800,000 to a million.
but it was over a million years, roughly a million years ago, and we controlled fire. Now suddenly we had a climate stabilization technology. Want to warm up? Go over to the fire. No fire? Make one. We invented the fur coat made of bearskin 300,000 years ago. We invented the first, I mean, we were living in caves. That's why we were called cavemen. And then we invented our first shelter made by us 17,000 years ago. We did it by using mammoth ribs and mammoth tusks and pitching them up against each other around a central point, then throwing mammoth hides over them. A tent. That was a climate stabilization technology. And we've invented a lot more since then. Now it's time to go big time. Now it's time to put 5 mile by 5 mile solar farms in space where they are exposed to the sun 24/7, where it's real baseload power, not winky blinky power that your main system has a hard time coping with. And put as many of them up there as possible, because with those, we can end the use of fossil fuels forever. We can achieve net zero. So, in a sense, there is nothing we cannot do. Oh, there are lots of things we cannot do. Right now, we cannot reach the stars. Right now, none of our technologies will allow us to do that. Give us another 100 years, and you'll see technologies that you and I wouldn't believe right now.
And the byproduct of oxygen itself is such a perfect microcosm because like the one thing we just kind of generally think of is, the first think of nature, think of something you immediately think of like a babbling brook, yeah, some nice crisp air, the leaves kind of flowing. It's like, yeah, for us, that's the beautiful. At one point, that was no different than looking at like the surface of Venus, like, oh fuck, oxygen, dude, get out of, you're dead.
Right,
And so what we accept as like this is the norm
right.
was not always the norm. Now it's been a long, long time, so everything we know is kind of like, what do you mean it's oxygen? But at a time it wasn't. So then you can say, well, then why did it? Imagine if you went back to that time and we're like, hey, don't produce oxygen. This is a bad, we're going to ruin the climate. Whatever complexity happened, back to the whole kind of just coked up, go, 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 that eventually that got us to here quicker. And we're still in the process of creating a bunch of shit that right now looks bad. Oh, we're doing this and the CO2 and the parts per million and blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be no different than, bringing in these small anaerobic or aerobic cells into your own body and you find the symbiosis. And you can say, well, then what's the point of all? Why move it faster? It seems like the zoomed out 100,000 foot picture is as the complexity gets more and more incalculable, immeasurably complex, so does its ability to tackle or overcome every hurdle that approaches it. Now, again, even just let's just stick with humans instead of going down to cells. Is yeah, for a long time it was like we got fire, and it was like that changes everything, and then that was an eternity. And then yeah, and then clothing, and then planting food instead of being hunter gatherers. All these things, they're always brand new. They always result in radical customization and the ability to do new things like travel or build up city states, little tiny things. And then there always seems to be some point where it's like, oh no, we're doing something bad. We're creating
Right.
all this excess shit. And then we find a way to utilize that excess shit or create a new technology that completely diminishes the deleterious effects of it. And then it moves faster and it moves into the written language. And oh, well, now the common man can, and on and on and on. And right now we're at this spot and you're like, it seems bad. We're doing this and there's plastic in the river, but we're gonna keep moving to a point where we got here quicker because we don't slow down. That now we have, like we were just talking about before the show, really kind of have the wave, the tsunami of AI starting to hit us to the point where its exponential increases are now felt in our everyday life. And it doesn't look like that's related to oxygen production, but it is. It's all on the same spectrum of increasing complexity, which in turn is just a bigger and bigger, toolbox. More, it's a screwdriver and then a hammer and then an acetylene torch and then an electron microscope. All it is at its most base level are grander and grander spectrums of tools to unlock more and more complex locks.
Right.
And it's either it's a cyanobacteria or it's a rover on Mars, but it's all on the same spectrum. It's
Right.
the ability to adapt and overcome new hurdles. And
Right.
what's the reasoning behind that? I don't know. It's the universe seems to want to do it. It
Right.
seems to. I can't tell you why that's happening, but you don't need to you don't need to understand like why water exists to look at it and go, well, it seems like it's flowing downhill. I
Right.
can't tell you why it's doing that. I don't know where the water came from or why the universe is here. But you look at it, you go, it seems like it's seeking level.
Right.
I don't know,
There's
but
a
I can't go
trick.
deeper than that,
You
but it
know,
seems like it's seeking a level.
one of the most basic ideas of classical science is entropy. It's the second law of
Yeah.
thermodynamics that um, order, the ways to create order in the universe, to create forms like planets, galaxies, stars. Um, the ways to achieve these things are very, very small in probability terms. The odds of having a total chaos where everything is random are huge. The numbers of ways to achieve that are enormous. And according to the entropists, the most probable thing always happens. Well, the most probable thing is a dissipation into randomness. What Lord Kelvin called the heat death. Well, he didn't coin the term, but he coined the idea of the heat death of the universe. Then one of his colleagues um, came up with the term heat death. One way or the other, that's not what happens. This universe is not constantly collapsing into a porridge. Instead, the very opposite is happening. This universe is wildly inventive, unbelievably inventive. I mean, it started with a pinprick less than the size of a pinprick, and that pinprick exploded. And that explosion produced three new properties that no one had ever seen before. And those were space, time, and speed. That was inventiveness. That was incredible inventiveness. Then the space, time, and speed did something utterly improbable, something that gave a big fuck you to the status quo of time, space, and speed. Precipitating from time, space, and speed came the first things, quarks. And here's where emergent properties, supersized surprises, come in. The quarks could not live on their own. They could not survive on their own. They came complete with what seemed to be little etiquette books that told them who you should run toward and who you should run away from. We call that attraction or repulsion. So they shunned the particles that they were not supposed to associate with. They got together with the particles they were. They got together in groups of three. And what are you going to get from a group of three quarks? Well, Aristotle will tell you basically garbage in, garbage out. It's all quarks. Quarks, that's it. Oh, no, that's not what happened at all. It was like the
The
miracle
charcoal.
miracle brigade on your driveway. From groups of three came properties the universe had never seen before, that conservationists would have said were giant sins against the nature of the universe. Um, Protons for one form of threesome, and neutrons for the other form of threesome. And neutron and proton had nothing to do with quarkdom, as so far as we can see. Now, look, Aristotle told us 2,300 years ago that if you break things down to their elements, he was the one to use the word elements. And so you break them down to their smallest parts, their smallest particles, and you find the laws. I mean, this is a weird one. Laws? You're talking about like Hammurabi for smallest particles? Yeah, that's what he was talking about. So if you find the laws of those particles, you understand everything you know about what we now call a system. And it turns out that is not true. We've been following his path, which is called reductionism ever since, breaking things down to their smallest particles. Why do you think we have a $15 billion collider in Europe, CERN, to break things down to their smallest particles and come to understand the laws of those particles so you could presumably understand everything? Well, that program has done brilliant things, but it will not explain that charcoal briquette, the match, and the flame, and the lighter fluid on your driveway. It simply won't, not much less, it won't explain Tommy Carrigan, the person who put the match to that lighter fluid in the charcoal briquette. I mean, there are between 35 trillion and 100 trillion cells that get together in a joint project. And from that, like, again, the flame leaping from the charcoal briquette, comes Tommy Carrigan, a distinct identity, having a distinct life course, out to make a distinct difference in the world. But to show you how fragile that emergent property is, if we put a bullet through your head, we will leave most of those 35 trillion to 100 trillion cells totally undisturbed. They will still be totally functional, totally capable of going about their business. But Tommy Carrigan, that flame-like property above the charcoal briquette, will be gone. And nature builds on emergent properties. Nature builds on supersized surprises. Those first time, space, and speed were a supersized surprise,
Mm-hmm.
a material miracle. The first quarks were supersized surprises. What happened when quarks got together in groups of three, protonness and neutronness? Utterly, astonishingly, unbelievably supersized surprise. And the universe has been doing this, gathering new social agglomerations that produce properties like Tommy Carrigan and Howard Bloom that are like the flame above the briquette. Nature has been doing this for 13.73 billion years now, and it has piled up quite a track record of astonishing new fuck yous to the status quo. Remember, nature loves those who oppose her most. It's from those that come the new supersized surprises, the new material miracles, the new emergent properties.
And yet, like you said, and it doesn't end after one, like one miracle is enough. I mean, you go, wow, I mean, that's fucking wild. But it happens again and again and again. And then it takes the miracles as the, okay, well, now we'll take the miracles of quarks and we'll call that baseline now, but it's not going to happen again. And then you put them together and you go, okay, we got protons and new, but it's not going to happen again. You get electrons and it's not going to happen again. And even now we're looking at, the nth degree of like, yeah, all the atoms make me, Tommy Carrier, make you,
Right,
Howard Bloom. And then what's happening again is, even just on this show, you and I together, it's creating a conversation that is really neither one of us. And
right,
how about every episode I do? That creates a podcast as a whole. And my podcast is one of many podcasts on Spotify, which is one platform on the internet, and it goes on and on again. So you eventually have to conclude it's gonna happen again, and it's gonna be in something that we don't quite understand. Well, all the computers in the world, it results in, this many exabytes of computing power. Well, now we're gonna have something come off of it, and it's gonna be another flame. We can go all these things together. They somehow make whatever, some hyper entity
Right.
of,
And the
of,
latest
of
example,
AI mixed with mankind, mixed with industrial output. And that's going to be some new emergent property that's going to be wild. And not only that, it's going to be so wild, it's going to look at, our metabolites of pollution, and it's going to be like, yeah, I can fix that real quick. I can get rid of that real quick.
right,
It's going to go forever. The only true, I think, behavioral law we can count on is that reality wants it to happen as fast as possible, which
right,
is why it takes these seemingly risky steps.
right,
Well, you're polluting the atmosphere, or you're creating oxygen, or you have a bunch of, I don't know, burning tires in the landfill.
right,
It does make sense when, again, you look at like the venture capitalists. And it's like, yeah, he had 9 failures and he lost 400 million, but then he created Uber. And all of a
right,
sudden, that 400 million was offset by 40 billion.
right,
And you go, oh, it didn't just kind of eke out, it beat it like 99-1.
right,
It's gonna happen again. The thing is it's kind of like golden handcuffs, right? Like the really cushy jobs, big executives,
right,
or you get your paycheck like 5 years after that work. It's so you don't leave the job.
right,
It seems to be that though. It's like if we do stop now, our sort of pollution karma is going to catch up and kill us. The only way out is to keep going forward. We got to create supercomputers and hypercomputers and nanotechnology. It seems to be we keep juggling another ball, and we go, all right, well, we can get another arm, but it's going to cost two balls, and it's now we got to juggle another one, and it just keeps going and going and going, and it for whatever reason, it seems to be that that's what reality wants or does.
right.
Just
Well, this universe, okay, according to the second law of thermodynamics, this universe should be like a slinky at the top of the stairs, and you just nudge it, and it goes down
go
stair
until
after
it's
stair after
done.
stair. Now do that, but take a picture of a video of it on your iPhone, and then run the video in reverse. It's the video in reverse. Entropy says the universe is constantly degrading, constantly falling apart, constantly becoming more chaotic, constantly with energy forms that are useless, that are spent. But in fact, this universe is doing what your reverse slinky does. Instead of climbing down the stairs, it's climbing up the stairs, and it's doing that relentlessly, with or without human beings. Those hurricanes on Jupiter are doing their thing, ripping things apart constantly, but forming their own form of order, structure, pattern, beauty, um, with or without our theories about entropy. That is taking a dispersed gas, which should tend toward more uselessness, and it's the cosmos itself that pulls those gases together into these giant swirls of energy. These hurricanes that are wider across than the Earth is from one pole to the other. Um, so this universe has a tendency to create order wherever it can, to find the next form of order lurking just beyond the envelope of possibility, lurking in the realm of impossibility. The cosmos is constantly searching, probing into that realm of the impossible to drag an impossible thing into existence. And at every step, there are new emergent properties. Whether it's the emergent property we call a sun, the emergent property we call a galaxy, the emergent property that we call a solar system, all of those are emergent properties. And so are you and I.
And it's again, it's the ocean going parents. Why you gotta go to the land? Just meet yourself another good fish, settle down, and but you move forward in this. Who are the people? What's the, it's, you don't even have to point to a single person, but what's sort of like the archetype we all know? Oh, the billionaire entrepreneur who what? Dropped out of Harvard. Why do you got to leave Harvard? You got everything you need right here. You got the Crimson. It's that logo is going to get you to any job you want. And it's not that I'm going to fit. I'm going to leave. Why are you
Right.
leaving? Because I'm going to go to a garage. What are you doing? Well, I'm going to build Apple or Microsoft. Or and these are the people we revere. We go, that's the guy that went out and did it. That's the guy that went and got it all.
Well, if you study publicity, if you study attention storms in human beings, um, you discover that the greatest way to get attention is to do something absolutely impossible. So Michael Jackson, my client, um, did invented the moonwalk, and we our jaws dropped
Yeah.
when we first saw it because it was impossible from the point of view of physics. Sorry, it was impossible. Um, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong got a lot of attention and respect for 50 years. Why? Because they did something impossible. They walked on the surface of the moon. America got attention and respect for 50 years. Why? Because we've done something impossible. We have put people on the moon. What does that tell you about the nature of nature? Nature favors those who make the impossible happen.
Yeah. It wants to see it.
Yeah, because this attention thing of ours, paying attention to the people who do the impossible, um, is not something we chose. It is not a product of evil capitalists trying to entrain or trying to chain our attention and enslave it. It's a product of our nature, our very nature. And so, what does our very nature say? Favor doing the
It
impossible.
wants to see the moonwalk or the kickflip
Right,
or the windmill dunk or
right,
you're right. It's not something that we were taught. It's as sexual attraction or like, your mouth waters when you see chocolate. It's like I didn't like that wasn't ingrained in me. It's
right,
like I'm heterosexual. Like you see like an attractive woman, like zoom, you just focused on it. And the same
right,
thing is, yeah, you're right. The moonwalk or literally landing on the moon, it's another thing that says, I mean, it's like why do corporations have R&D? Why does Ford or Dell or whatever the fuck or Boeing? It's like why can't you just enjoy your ocean? You've got market saturation, you're the client. The entire thing is like how are we going to push it forward? How are we going to have the iPhone or the whatever that's going to flip it all upside down?
right,
That is what we go towards. That is what I mean, what does everyone do with their money? Do you just put it under your mattress? No, you invest it. No, you're not obviously in your mind, you're not trying to push mankind forward. You want to get a good return on your investment. But what do we all do? We all take the thing that we slave towards and then we throw it in the market. And it's just like, now go figure something else out. It's like, why can't you just be happy with your hut? And it's like, fuck that. Self-driving cars, Uber, but that's what we do. And
right.
if you want to slow down, you, if you're going for homeostasis and equilibrium, you will never get it. You will instead be steamrolled.
Well, plus environmental extremism. I mean, a certain amount of environmentalism is absolutely necessary.
Sure.
But environmental extremism is a cancer in only one culture, Western culture. It could not exist in another culture. It could not exist in Russia under Vladimir Putin. It does exist under Xi Jinping, but as a carbon copy
Yeah.
of what it is here. And um, and the ultra environmentalists who want to do away with human civilization, who want to do away with modern industrialism, who want to do away with capitalism, how are they walking to their marches? On these extraordinarily engineered shoes that weigh less than a pound per pair, that have been engineered by American capitalists, yes, built by people in China and Indonesia.
Modeled after your arches, make sure it doesn't fuck up your spine out of the cheapest
Exactly.
product possible.
Exactly. And I remember walking around in leather clodhoppers, and man, was that tough. That just wasn't fun. Um, and they're organizing via their cell phones. So who gave them their cell phones? Western culture, Western civilization. Capitalism, technology, constantly challenging the bounds of the envelope of possibility and punching it open to encompass more and more impossible things. Um, and yet they want to destroy all these things. Um, that is insane. But if we manage to commit suicide via extremism in ecology, it simply means that we're going to be stomped over by China, which is going full tilt into the kinds of things that we went into full tilt up until the last 50 years. But it's not fair to say that environmental extremism has not stopped the forward movement of this civilization. And the one thing it could do, if it smothered capitalism, capitalism is the engine of creativity. And capitalism does something that nobody acknowledges. It takes things that only the rich could have, and it finds ways to distribute them to the poor,
Mm-hmm.
to the middle class. The middle class way of life is made because of capitalism, period.
Living the life of
Fruits of
kings. Yeah.
capitalism. And you look back in the days when Khrushchev, the head of Russia, the head of the USSR, the Soviet republics at the time, was debating with Richard Nixon. Um, the supermarkets in America were just filled with goods and people. The markets in Russia had shortages of everything. And when you could stand in line, a 3 block long line, waiting for bread. When it came to boots, there was only a standard kind of boot that was made, and there were shortages, and you had trouble getting them, and they were not what you wanted. How did you know what you want? Because you looked at the West and you saw all kinds of crazy boots, amazing boots they had over there. Socialism has not worked until Deng Xiaoping in China, a socialist, Marxist, Leninist Marxist country, um, looked at the West and said, let's allow people to get rich. That was around 1980. So what did they do? They let a certain amount of capitalism into the country. And what happened? China became the fastest growing economy in the world and is now the second greatest economy in the world. It's only half the size of our economy, but if we kill ourselves with environmental extremism, any good thing in excess is a poison. So environmentalism is good, but in excess, no, it's damaging. It's a poison. And if we allow that to poison us, the Chinese are just going to stomp all over us. They have been preparing to do so ever since at least 2012 when Xi Jinping took power. His major goal has been to put the United States in a backwater and to take over the #1 position in the world. And in February, I believe February 28th, Donald Trump did something that helped Xi Jinping enormously. He had a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, the head of the Ukraine, and he had it in front of the cameras, and it wasn't just him. It was him and a gang of 5 others. And they beat the shit out of Vladimir Zelensky verbally, not using their fists. And at that point, the Europeans said, we cannot rely on the Americans as allies anymore. We're going to have to build our own military structure. And our partners in Asia, Japan and Korea in particular, said, we can't rely on the United States anymore to protect us. We're going to have to find our own way of protecting ourselves. And the world abandoned the United States. Donald Trump stepped out of the role of leader of the free world and leader of the world and left the whole system that America had established since 1945, a whole global system with an empty throne, an empty seat at the center. Well, guess who's trying to take that empty seat? Xi Jinping. And he's getting a lot of help because he's part of a military alliance that doesn't tell you it's there. I call it the axis of evil. It's Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, and a few others.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got a lot of help in pulling this off. Look at what Lula da Silva was doing in Brazil this week, trying to get his economy as tightly linked to the Chinese economy as possible so he could say fuck you to the United States of America. People are turning against us. Now, people were against us because we were number one, and that's always resented. But the people who are turning against us are finding a welcome home in the global sphere of the Chinese. America can easily be replaced as what the Chinese call the global hegemon.
Mhm.
So we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep yanking as many impossible things into the realm of the everyday as is possible at all. Because that's what will keep us ahead. And the one thing we've got going for us right now, when our science system is being torn apart, when a lot of things are being torn apart, our traffic control system is being torn apart. Elon Musk with Doge fired 400 staffers at the FAA, and those are staffers that help with the air traffic control system. And now we wonder why we're having problems with our aircraft seemingly falling out of the skies. Been 44 aircraft accidents since the beginning of the year. So all kinds of things are going wrong. But our space program is exceeding anything the rest of the world can come anywhere near doing. Why? Because our space program is not at NASA anymore.
Hmm.
The real space program is Elon Musk. So much as we may hate what he did with Doge, and I hate it, it was cruel, it was vicious, it was unnecessary, and it was tearing the United States apart. It was doing China's work, not America's work, China's work. So as much as we can hate him, he has now had close to 460 successful launches of his Falcon 9, putting things in orbit. And his Starship, which will carry 100 passengers and a lot of cargo, a whole lot of cargo, is in trouble right now because it's had two explosions in a row. But it may get its first tryout as early as, I forget the date, but within the next 2 weeks.
Oh,
It may
wow.
get tryout number 9. Um, and you know that the more failures, the more he learns.
Hmm.
The more he learns, the better he can make his rockets. So Elon is going to succeed at some point. You look doubtful about that,
No, 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 no. I'm thinking about what I said earlier about kind of the coked up investor of we're
right?
gonna invest in this, and it's like failure after failure, but then you do one that really works. I mean,
Right,
again, for every, life form, it's 99% are gone forever, but then the one that does work outweighs the losses like 100 to 1. It does seem it's like, well, what is Elon just at its most just remove by and look at it, a very intelligent, hardworking guy. You don't ascribe good or bad to it. Just look at it as kind of the chaos engine, like the cosmos and sex. You have a bunch of shit. You have, the same thing you have with a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady. You have ego, right? But when the thing does work, what you said is the space program in the kind of how what you pointed out in the book is like when something does work, it's the quantum leap forward, and all of a sudden everything else in the stark cold spreadsheet of advancement and complexity seems to be comes out in the wash.
right,
And it seems like right now, just even if you were just scale it, right? Like what you talked about with, the moss growing to grass. It's like it doesn't seem like much, but relatively, that'd be like if I think you said it'd be like if we built a 50-mile tall skyscraper. The tallest skyscraper in the world right now is less than a kilometer. It's like, okay, so realistically, or like the ejection of sperm, and it's like once you scale it up relatively, for whatever reason, it seems to be that that's just a huge leap forward is when all of a sudden we can just take shit and throw it relatively really far away. It seems
right,
crude, but it's kind of seemed to work. It's come out of the ocean and leave the ground to the sky. The next thing seems to be like how far can you throw shit?
right,
And it might be that if you just strip away all else and look at it, and the life seems to be selecting for the organism or group of organisms whose charcoal briquette flame is just yeeting shit off the planet.
right.
It doesn't care if it's an American flag or a Chinese. It doesn't even care if you have a flag. It doesn't even care. It just seems to be the meta theme is how far can you just get away? Right.
Right.
Just
In order to take the slinky up another
yes.
step
It
on the
and it,
invisible staircase of the cosmos.
and you have a bunch of shit in the meantime. It's like, yeah, well, that thing kind of worked. And what other things about do we talk about Zip 2? Yeah, I guess PayPal's still kind of around. Solar City is, you maybe thought it'd be bigger, and yeah, the Hyperloop is not really there. And but then you have this one that it seems to just be pushing shit forward.
Right.
And I mean, I think another good way to look at it is like the Manhattan Project. At the same time we were doing the Manhattan Project, we were also working on something where we were going to take a bunch of napalm jelly packets, delayed incendiary bombs, and strap them to bats because bats seek out hiding places.
Right.
And a lot of Japanese cities were wood. We were going to
Right.
drop all these bats out. They were going to, according to our plan, they were going to go find all these nooks and crannies. And then 12 hours later, after they'd settled, all these bombs were going to detonate and burn the city. But then the nuke worked, and we kind of
Right.
took that one. And we're like, this one's kind of fucking retarded. We're gonna put this
Right.
one aside. We're gonna do the nuke. But we don't know about that. We just see in hindsight. We go, oh yeah. Then we invented the nuke. The Nazis are trying to build death rays in space with mirrors. Like you only know that they're silly and goofy ideas in hindsight. But what really worked is you found the one key that clicked, and it was just happened to be a fission bomb. It's like, all right.
Right. And very often the ideas that seem to be failures and goofy ideas um, become important. Back in
Well, they
19,
are because we found out that that wasn't we go, okay, it's not bats. We know that that one's not it. Do this.
well, back in the 1980s, when I was working on the Lucifer principle, I championed something called artificial intelligence. And then artificial intelligence became unfashionable in the scientific community for the next 30 to 40 years. Now, what's happening with artificial intelligence? The goofy thing that was discarded in science for 30 or 40 years. It's it's the new flame. It is the new flame. I now can collaborate with my digital twin. And of course, I can now for my episodes on Coast to Coast every week, my news commentary. I can now pull together. I was already able to pull together an awful lot of material. Now I can pull together 5 times as much material, and I can do a survey of studies if I want. I mean, last week the assignment was um, all of the bans on cell phones in schools in 16 states. And is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, I was able to do a survey of surveys, a survey of scientific studies. And the scientific studies, in total, there were about 20 of them, concluded that yes, this was a positive thing, that it was increasing grade point averages, especially among girls. Um, that's not what I would have been inclined to say, but I was able to get it to work as if it were 5 assistants going on and fetching all kinds of information for me and giving me an overview of the conclusions. I was never capable of that before. I used to, when I read about Diderot, who was one of the founders of the the first encyclopedia, Diderot had 5 assistants, and he had his own personal library. And when he was curious about something, he'd get the assistant to go find the answer for him. Well, guess what? I've always wanted those 5 assistants, but have never been able to afford them ever. I never will. But now I have them. I have my 4 AIs who work with me, and they do yeoman's work or yeowoman's work.
One kind of, and I hadn't really thought about it, but one idea I've kind of been tossing around the last year or so, and I mean tossing around, I mean truly based in nothing, just my own thought was, what if the seemingly generational increase in autism we've seen over the last couple generations, what what if that is life throwing shit at it because it's going, you got to get off this planet. You got to, and it's like, well, what do you mean? And it's like autism, like it can be a wildly detrimental thing that you can also be brilliant. I
Right.
almost wonder if that's a way. we start, its life is just going, we got this climate change thing, we got this pollution thing, we got this population thing, and we got to get off the planet. It seems like it's just kind of throwing more. And again, it's like the ocean parent. It's like, why do you need these autistic brains? Just have a normal brain. You have everything you want. And it's like, yeah, but every once in a while, one of these autistic motherfuckers invents something.
Right,
I almost wonder if it's some like meta feedback system in the biosphere where it's like, don't look at it as autism, just look at it as these brains that digest reality and see patterns in a different way.
right.
And that doesn't, I mean, that doesn't take away from the people that have, severely autistic children and it's a handy, I get it. I'm not trying to make light of it. But there is, I mean, what's kind of the meme? Weaponized autism. That's so they're just able to focus and see something in a different way. You almost wonder if the increase, and it could just be that we're testing for it, so maybe it's not. I have no idea. But yeah, I almost wonder if that's something that the biosphere at large is doing is like just get more kind of eccentric minds out there, and eventually it's going to hit a critical mass or
Right.
enough unique ways of looking at reality. It's like taking mushrooms and kind of unlearning everything and seeing the world for the first time again. You almost wonder if that's something it's doing, where it's like get off the planet, get off the planet, get off the planet, and this is a way of trying it. It's buying a lottery ticket every day. It's like you still have your job, but you're going, maybe one of these will hit.
So one of the tiny messages in this book is bring space to life by bringing life to space. Garden the solar system and green the galaxy.
Hmm.
Um, just don't stop with one poison pill of stone. Get as many poison
Yeah,
pills, green as many poison pills of stone as
yeah,
you possibly can. And that definitely seems to be life's mandate. So I think we should wrap
yeah.
up.
No, I know. Yeah, I just glanced at my watch. I know we're way over, but I was gonna say, yeah, no. It's like, well, why keep expanding? It's like, well, what is the charcoal briquette of an entire galaxy of civilizations
Right. Oh,
beyond comprehension?
that would be amazing.
Beyond comprehension. It's
Right.
like, so you have to keep pushing it forward because everything
Right.
we know is from the relentless pushing forward.
Right.
It's just you can't stop. That it's again, it's go to a Wall Street boardroom with a bunch of coked up guys, a bunch of Gordon Geckos, and be like, maybe we should invest in blue chip stocks. They'd throw you out of the window to your death, right? It's like no, go faster, go faster,
Right.
and it's I don't know. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's crazy and it's anxiety inducing, but it ultimately is how we get these
Well,
hedge
it's
fund that is Earth just keeps
as
plowing forward.
strange as it seems, that seems to be what the cosmos wants out of us, which
Yes.
means that's what nature wants out of us. Nature
Yes.
loves those who oppose her most. So there are lots of other good stories in this book, tons of stories, including what sex has to do with all of this.
Hmm.
But that's another topic for another time.
Sure. Yeah, no, we'll wrap it up. And yeah, for everybody listening, go to the description, find the links to all the books, website, social, all that stuff. Um, I'll send this will be up tomorrow. I'll send it to you. And Howard, as always, brother, I love talking to you. And I think we should I think we should do another one on this book because I don't think we hit on everything today. But uh yeah, we'll wrap it up for now. But let's do another one.
Okay, we'll do another one.
All right, brother. All right, Howard. Love you, brother. It's always good to catch up with you, man.
Have
Love
a
talking to
great
you.
night.
You too, sir. Guys.